Gentle heart, you have been measuring yourself on the wrong scale your entire life. Every morning you wake up, and before your feet even touch the floor, a calculation begins. How much did I accomplish yesterday? How do I compare to the people around me? Am I falling behind? Am I enough? The scale you have been using measures performance, output, approval, visible results, the things the world has taught you to count. And by that scale, you have spent years feeling like you come up short, like the gap between where you are and where you should be is evidence of something fundamentally lacking in you. But I need to tell you something that will change everything if you let it reach the place in you where this matters most. The scale is broken. It was never designed to measure what you are actually worth. You have been weighing your soul on a scale built for counting coins, and every time the number disappointed you, you believed the number instead of questioning the instrument. My scale measures something entirely different. It does not count what you produce or what others think of you. It weighs something that existed in you before you ever performed a single act in this world, something that no failure has diminished and no achievement has added to. You have a value you cannot fully comprehend. Let that settle. Do not move past it too quickly. Let it move past the surface of your thoughts and travel down into the deeper places where the old wounds live, where the old doubts have made their home, where the voices of disappointment and rejection have stacked up over the years like furniture left in a room nobody uses anymore. I want those old things to hear what I am saying. I want the tired places in you to hear it. Your value is not something I assign to you based on a review of your behavior. Your value is not the sum of your accomplishments. Your value is not determined by what other people think of you, or whether they notice you, or whether they choose you, or whether they stay. Your value comes from me. It flows from me. It was embedded in you at the moment of your creation, and it has been yours completely from that very first instant. Think about what it means to be made in my image. Most people have heard those words and let them pass through without really stopping to consider what is being said. When I formed you, I did not reach for a template that had been used 1,000 times before. I reached into the deepest part of who I am. I breathed into you the breath of life, and that breath carries within it something of my own nature, my own creativity, my own capacity to love, my own ability to dream and feel and choose. You carry that. Inside you, right now, there is something of the divine. Not because you achieved it or deserved it or applied for it, but because that is what I poured into you when I made you. You were crafted in the image of the one who spoke light into darkness. You were shaped by the hands that stretched out the sky. You were given life by the same power that set every star in its place and named each one by name. That is the lineage that runs through you. That is the heritage that no circumstance in your life has ever been able to erase. You were created in my image. Every human being alive carries that mark, that sacred imprint of the divine, but each person carries it in a way that is entirely their own. The image of God in you is not identical to the image of God in anyone else. Your unique personality, the specific way your mind works, the distinctive quality of the love you are capable of giving, the particular gifts and longings that make you recognizably you, all of that is the image of God expressed through one singular human life. There is nobody else who expresses it exactly the way you do. Not in the generation you were born into, and not in all the generations that have come before or will come after. The way God is reflected in you is a way that exists nowhere else in creation, which means that if you were not here, something of the divine would go unexpressed. Something that only you can show the world about who I am would simply be absent. That is not a small thing. And here is what I need you to understand about foundations. A house can be painted 1,000 different colors. The furniture inside can be rearranged. The windows can be opened or shuttered. Storms can batter the walls. Seasons of neglect can let the garden grow wild. The roof can spring leaks, and the paint can peel, and the whole structure can fall into apparent disrepair. But none of those things touch the foundation. The foundation holds, regardless of what happens to everything built upon it. Your foundation is the image of God woven into your very being, and that image has never been removed, not by your worst season, not by the years when you wandered, not by the choices you regret, not by the failures that still wake you in the quiet hours when the rest of the world is sleeping, not by the wounds you have received, not by the wounds you have inflicted, not by the long stretches when you could not feel me, or hear me, or believe that I was near. That image is still there, still intact, still holding, still speaking of a value that no human being, no circumstance, no failure, and no voice of accusation has the authority to take from you. My eyes rest upon you with a tenderness that language struggles to contain. I have been watching you try to figure out your own worth by measuring yourself against other people. And I have wanted to reach through every comparison and hold your face in my hands and say, stop measuring. You are not in competition. You are not made to fit into someone else's standard of value. You were made as an original, as a deliberate and intentional creation, as someone I specifically wanted to exist. Not someone I tolerated into existence. Not someone who slipped in while I was distracted. Someone I chose. Someone I thought about. Someone whose life I designed with care and purpose and love that was fully formed before you took your first breath. The world has a way of assigning value based on visible things. How much you produce, how well you perform, how attractive you are, how successful, how financially stable, how socially connected, how impressive your list of accomplishments looks when it is written down. The world builds elaborate hierarchies of worth and then invites everyone to compete for a place near the top of those hierarchies. And the competition is exhausting, and the gap between where you are and where the hierarchy says you should be can feel crushing. I understand that you have felt that weight. I understand that there have been mornings when you lay in bed and thought about what the day would ask of you, and the gap between what was being asked and what you felt capable of giving felt insurmountable. I understand that you have looked at yourself through the world's measuring system and come up wanting, and that the feeling of coming up wanting is one of the most uncomfortable and persistent feelings a person can carry. I want to dismantle that measuring system from the ground up. Not by telling you that you are actually very successful, or that you actually perform quite well, or that other people actually do admire you if only you could see it. I want to dismantle it at a far more fundamental level than that. I want to tell you that the entire measuring system is wrong. The hierarchy is built on the wrong foundation. When you use the world's ruler to measure yourself, you are using a tool that was never designed to measure what actually matters. You are like someone trying to measure the depth of the ocean with a household tape measure. The tool is inadequate for the thing being measured. Your value is not the kind of thing the world knows how to quantify, because your value is eternal in nature, and the world only knows how to count things that have an expiration date. Eternal value does not depreciate. That is the nature of what eternal means. Something that is eternal does not wear out. It does not diminish over time. It does not lose its worth through use or through the passage of years or through the accumulation of mistakes. Think about the things in this world that hold their value best. The things that appraisers and collectors seek out. The rare and the irreplaceable. Even those things eventually deteriorate. Time touches everything in this created order. The most valuable painting will eventually fade. The most precious gem will eventually be lost or destroyed. But what I have placed in you belongs to a different category entirely. The value I have assigned to you, the worth that is woven into your identity as my child, belongs to eternity. It was there before time began to count its days, and it will remain long after time itself has run its course. You are not an accident. Those 4 words deserve more than a passing acknowledgement. Let them settle in the way that a person settles into a chair that was built specifically for them, not rushing past the experience of the fit. You are not an accident, not a biological coincidence, not a random arrangement of matter that happened to achieve consciousness, not a mistake that got through the process, not a child who was planned by someone else and tolerated by me. You were specifically intended. The exact person you are, with your particular face and your particular history and your particular set of longings and fears and gifts and wounds, the exact combination of everything that makes you you, that combination was deliberate. I wanted someone exactly like you to exist, and so you do. Before the circumstances that led to your birth were arranged, I had already decided that you would exist. The desire for you preceded the mechanism of your arrival. You were wanted before you were made. The longing for you to be in the world predates every circumstance that eventually made your presence in the world possible. That is the opposite of chance. That is the most deliberate possible origin for a life. And because your origin was deliberate, your presence here is meaningful in the most irreducible sense. Not meaningful in the sense that you will necessarily achieve great things by the world's measurement. Meaningful in the sense that your existence itself is part of something intentional, part of a design that considered you specifically and decided that the world needed exactly you. Consider the complexity of what you are for a moment, not the surface complexity of your schedule or your relationships or your circumstances, though those too have their own layered texture. The interior complexity, the layers upon layers of who you have become through the accumulation of every experience, every relationship, every conversation, every book you read, every pain you endured, every joy you tasted. The intricate architecture of your memories and your hopes, the specific texture of the way you think and feel, the unique quality of the way you love the things you love, the particular calibration of your conscience, the specific shape of your sense of humor, the precise way you experience beauty. All of that is you. And all of that is known to me in complete detail, cataloged not as data but as something more intimate, the way a person holds in their heart the entirety of someone they love, the whole portrait, not the series of facts. Nothing about you escapes me, not the parts you are proud of and display freely, not the parts you keep carefully hidden from everyone, the parts you revisit in your most honest moments and hope no one ever sees. Not the parts that are still in the process of becoming. The half-formed things, the impulses toward goodness that have not yet found their full expression, the old habits that are slowly, painfully, genuinely being transformed. I see all of it, every corner and every shadow. And what I see does not make me want to look away. What I see makes me lean in closer. What I see is precious to me in the way that the full and complete reality of someone you truly love is precious. Not despite its complexity and imperfection, but including it, holding all of it in the embrace of a love that is larger than any single piece of the picture. Let me tell you about the moment before your life began. Before you had accomplished anything, before you had a single thought, before you had smiled your first smile or cried your first tear, before the world had a chance to shape you in any direction at all, I already loved you. Completely. Without reservation. Without condition, without a list of things you would need to do to keep that love from diminishing. My love was fully yours before you knew anything, before you could do anything, before there was any question of whether you deserved it. That is the kind of love that precedes all transaction, that has no fine print, that does not come with the quiet clause that says, as long as you keep this up. My love was already a river in full flood before the first moment of your life. And it has not once slowed to a trickle since that day. Not when you were at your best, most faithful, most grateful, and most aligned with everything I hoped for you. Not when you were at your lowest, most confused, most far from me, most caught up in the things that pulled you away from who I made you to be. My love through all of it was the same love. Full, complete, unwavering. Not because I am unaware of the difference between the seasons, but because my love is not weather. It does not change with the climate of your behavior. It has its own constant temperature, its own steady light, its own inexhaustible supply, and none of the variables of your life have ever had the power to adjust it. You are my beloved child. Not a servant I tolerate because you are useful. Not an employee I keep on because your performance numbers are acceptable. Not a project I am hoping will eventually become something worth the investment I have made. My child, my beloved child. The word beloved is not a casual word. In the ancient texts, the word carried the weight of singularity, the sense of the one who is above all others, the object of the heart's deepest affection. Beloved means more than liked, more than appreciated, more than cared for in a general sense. Beloved means the one who is held in the innermost chamber of love, the one for whom no price would be too great, the one whose loss would be felt as an irreplaceable loss, not a replacement for whom might be found somewhere else. You are my beloved child. The full weight of that word is upon you right now. There have been seasons in your life when you could not feel that love, when the pain you were carrying was so loud that the sound of my voice was drowned out entirely, when the circumstances around you were so dark that you could not see the light I was shining, when you had listened to so many other voices for so long that my voice had become almost unrecognizable to you, a distant thing, a theoretical concept, something other people seemed to experience clearly while you strained to hear even an echo of it. Those seasons were real. The darkness was real. The confusion was real. The silence was real, or felt real. And I want you to know that in every single one of those seasons, through every dark stretch, not one moment of them, I was absent. My presence surrounded you through all of it, even when you could not sense me, even when you felt completely alone, even when the silence felt like abandonment. I was with you. My hand was on your shoulder through every one of those hard stretches. My eyes rested upon you through every valley. I never stepped back. I never turned away. I never decided you were too much trouble or too far gone or too disappointing for me to keep staying close. Think about the longest and darkest stretch you have been through, the one that left the deepest mark, the one that you still carry traces of, the one that fundamentally changed something about the way you see the world or yourself. Go back there for a moment, not to re-inhabit the pain, but to look with different eyes. I walked beside you through that, every single day of it. When the weight was heaviest, my hand was under it with you, taking more of it than you knew. When the confusion was thickest, my wisdom was available even when you could not access it. When the loneliness was most acute, I was the most present I had ever been, the most intensely close, leaning in toward the wound with the tenderness of one who hates to see what is beloved hurting. That faithfulness is not something I maintain because I have an obligation. I stay because I want to be where you are. I stay because you matter to me in a way that nothing can alter. I stay because leaving you is something I am not willing to do. Not when things are easy, and not when things are hard. Not when you are grateful, and not when you have forgotten me entirely. My love for you does not require your attention to continue existing. It burns on its own, steady and constant, like a fire that has no intention of going out. The fire does not need your fuel. It is sustained by something in me that is simply not capable of extinguishing when it comes to you. The price I paid for you tells you something about what I think you are worth. When a buyer pays a great price for something, that price communicates value in a language that everyone understands. The greater the price, the greater the perceived worth of what was purchased. This is true in markets and in hearts. And I want you to think carefully about the price that was paid for you, because that price is the most articulate statement about your value that I have ever made. The maximum price. The most irreplaceable thing. What was given for you was not a surplus I had lying around, something I could part with because I had plenty. What was given for you was everything. The price paid for your freedom, for your restoration, for your reconciliation to me, was the most costly thing I had to give. And I paid it. Not reluctantly. Not with a calculation of whether you were worth it that came out favorably only barely. With the decision of someone who looked at you and said, yes. Without hesitation, without reservation, without demanding a track record of performance first. Yes to you. That transaction, that act of love so extravagant it reshaped history, was my clearest declaration of what you are worth to me. Not the history of the world in general, but you specifically. When the world tells you that you are not enough, that declaration is still standing in its full force. When the critic in your own mind tells you that you are too broken to be truly valued, that declaration does not waver. When the people who should have shown you your worth have failed and disappointed and walked away, the transaction holds. Nothing that has happened in your life since that great price was paid has changed the terms of what was declared on that day. You are still worth everything to me. You are worth everything then, and you are worth everything right now, and you will be worth everything every single day for the rest of your life and into eternity beyond the last day of time. This is what I want to talk about with you through this whole conversation. This is the truth I have been longing to speak into the deepest part of who you are. Not a lecture. Not a list of things you need to do to become more valuable. Not a checklist of improvements required before the value becomes fully accessible to you. A revelation. A drawing back of the curtain to let you see what has always been true about you. What was written about you before the foundations of the world. What is engraved not on a wall or a page, but on the very palm of my hand. You are infinitely valuable. You are my personal treasure. You are the jewel I would give up everything to keep. And I want you to begin to believe it, not just as a theological idea stored in the part of your mind where you keep religious concepts, but as a lived reality, as something you carry with you into every room you walk into. Something that changes the way you hold your head and the way you speak, and the way you decide whether you deserve the good things I've been preparing for you. So draw near to me. Let the noise of every other voice fall quiet for a while. And let me tell you, at length and with great care, who you really are to me. Here is something I have been watching you carry for a long time. The weight of the gap between who you are told you should be and who you actually experience yourself to be in the private hours when no one is watching. That gap is one of the most persistent and exhausting things a person can live with. And it is made heavier by the fact that most people carry it without ever naming it clearly. They just feel the weight and attribute it to some vague personal failing, some chronic insufficiency they can never quite correct, some fundamental wrong that they have decided is simply part of their permanent makeup. But the gap is not what they think it is. The gap is not evidence that you are deficient. The gap is evidence that you are made for something larger than what the world has been able to show you. Something in you knows what you were built for, and that something is always in conversation with the distance between what you were built for and what the current circumstances reflect. That ache of the gap, the longing that will not fully quiet itself, the persistent sense that there is more, that something in you is still waiting to be expressed or discovered or received, that is not pathology. That is the image of God in you responding to its own nature. The image of God in you recognizes what it came from, and it leans toward home. The longing you feel is itself a form of honor. It means that something in you has not been fully deceived. Something in you still knows that you are made for fullness, for belonging, for love without condition, for purpose that is meaningful, for a life that is genuinely yours, and not just a pale copy of a life you were supposed to have. Belonging is the right part of you speaking, the part that is not forgotten, even in the longest winters of your life, that there is a spring coming, and that you were made for the spring as much as for anything. Let me speak about the image of God in you with more specificity, because it deserves more than a general acknowledgement. The image of God in you is most visible in your capacity to love. Not perfectly, not without limit, because you are human, and therefore bounded in the ways that human beings are bounded. But the impulse itself, the orientation toward connection and relationship, and the desire to be known and to know, that impulse is not just biology. It is the echo of the nature of the one who made you. I am love, at the most fundamental level, and the love in you is a reflection of that. When you love your children or your friends or the stranger you stop to help, when you care about someone else's suffering as if it were your own, when you give in ways that cost you something, that is the image of God moving through a human life. That is you expressing what you were made from. That is one of the most accurate pictures of me that exists in the world. Your creativity reveals this same image with remarkable clarity. Every time you make something, whether it is something the world would call art or simply something practical and beautiful, a meal prepared with care, a space arranged with attention, a problem solved in a way that is elegant rather than merely functional, you are doing something that reflects the nature of the Creator. The drive to bring something from nothing, to take raw material and shape it into something that was not there before. That drive in you is not accidental. It is one of the clearest ways you carry my nature. I am the original maker, and you, made in my image, are a maker too, in your own scale and your own domain. Consider also your capacity for justice, the way something in you rises up when you see something wrong, the indignation you feel when the vulnerable are harmed, the deep satisfaction you feel when wrong things are made right. That moral instinct, that sensitivity to what is just and what is not, that comes from the nature of the God who himself is just and who hates to see the weak exploited or the innocent condemned. The anger you feel at injustice is my own character moving through you, responding to what is incompatible with the nature of the one who made you. The image of God in you is visible in your capacity for beauty, the way you can be moved by something genuinely beautiful, the way certain music or certain landscapes or certain moments of human love and courage reach inside you and touch something that you might struggle to name, but that feels essential. The capacity for aesthetic experience, for being moved by the beautiful, is part of what it means to be made in the image of the one who filled this world with extraordinary beauty, and who clearly takes pleasure in the beautiful. All of this is in you. The love, the creativity, the justice impulse, the capacity for beauty, all of it reflecting the one who made you. And because all of it is part of the image of God that you carry, all of it is permanently yours. The image has not been removed. It has not faded beyond recognition. It has been obscured at times, hidden under the debris of difficult seasons and wrong beliefs, and the weight of years of living in a world that is not fully as it was meant to be. But the image is still there, still intact beneath everything that has tried to cover it, still speaking of the one who pressed it into your being in the moment of your creation. When I look at you and see that image, I am seeing something of myself, and what I feel when I see it is what any parent feels when they recognize themselves in their child, something that goes beyond description, a recognition and an affection and a particular pleasure that belongs only to that specific relationship. You are mine, made from what I am, carrying what I gave you, belonging to me in the most fundamental way that a created thing belongs to its creator, when the creator is also its parent. Now I want to talk about what happens when you walk into a room. Not the social dynamic, not the question of whether people notice you or whether you feel comfortable or whether you know anyone there. The spiritual reality. When you walk into a room, you bring the image of God into that room. You bring love, even if it is not yet expressed. You bring the capacity for compassion and creativity and the moral instinct and the sensitivity to beauty. You bring a piece of the divine into whatever space you enter. Not because you are spiritually elite, or because you have achieved a level of holiness that makes you a special carrier. Simply because you are made in the image of God, and that image goes with you everywhere you go. The room is different because you are in it. Not in a way that is always visible or loud or immediately impactful, but in the deep reality, in the way that I see things. The room is different. The love you carry changes the spiritual temperature of the space. The compassion in you responds to the need in others before either of you have said a word. The particular combination of gifts and perspectives and experiences that you bring is not duplicated by anyone else in that room. When you are present, something is present that would not otherwise be there. That means something. You mean something in every space you occupy, not just the spaces where you are performing a role or fulfilling a function, the ordinary spaces. The spaces where you are simply present, simply there, simply being who you are. You bring something that matters, every single time. I want you to know the full truth of what I said when I called you my personal treasure. The word treasure is not a casual word. Treasure is not the same as property. Treasure is not the same as asset. Treasure is the word for the thing that is most valued, most carefully kept, most deeply prized by the one who holds it. Treasure is what you put in the safest place. Treasure is what you carry with you when you have to leave everything else behind. Treasure is what you look for when it is lost, what you celebrate when it is found, what you cannot imagine being without. You are that, to me. Not as one item in a collection of many, each similar enough that the loss of one would be compensated by the remaining others. As the treasure that is you, specific, particular, irreplaceable, the thing whose loss could not be made up by any substitute. When I call you my personal treasure, I mean that the you that you are is the exact and irreplaceable thing that is of most value to me. Not a generic version of a human being, not a representative of a category. You, the actual you. The treasure is you. And when the world treats you carelessly, when it handles you roughly, when it misplaces you or misvalues you, or does not seem to know what it has, that says nothing about your status as my treasure. The world's assessment of what is valuable and mine are very different. The world tends to value what is loud, what is productive, what can be quantified, what advances certain kinds of agendas. I value the faithful and the loving and the genuinely human and the one who carries the image of God with integrity, even when no one is watching. The world and I are not using the same measure. And on the question of your value, my measure is the one that matters. My most precious jewel. That is the other image I want you to carry. Jewels are created under pressure. The most precious stones in the world are formed in conditions of intense heat and compression, conditions that would seem destructive, but that are actually transformative. The carbon that becomes a diamond under pressure does not become more valuable despite the pressure. It becomes what it is because of the pressure. The process that seemed like destruction was actually the process of becoming. The hard seasons you have been through, the ones that felt like too much, the ones that broke things in you that you had been hoping would hold, the ones that you are still carrying the marks of, I do not look at those seasons and see damage. I look at them and see transformation. I look at them and see the process through which something in you that was already precious is being made into something even more beautiful. Not because suffering is good in itself, but because my hands are in the pressure, because I am present in the heat, because I am working in the difficulty, not merely watching it from outside, but actively engaged with what is being formed in you through it. You are my jewel, the one who is precious to me precisely because of the full reality of who you are, including the parts that were formed under pressure, including the marks of the hard seasons, including the beauty that is still emerging from what has not yet fully finished its forming. All of it is precious. All of it is held carefully. All of it is seen and known and valued by the one who is making you into something more beautiful than you can currently see. Believe in your value. Not because you have earned the belief or deserve to feel good about yourself as a reward for good behavior, but because the one who made you, the one who formed you with personal care and breathed life into you, and calls you by name and holds you as his treasure, believes deeply in you. The belief I have in you does not depend on your performance. It does not fluctuate with your faith. It does not require you to be at your best to be maintained. My belief in you is as constant as my love, because they are the same thing. I believe in you because I love you, and I love you because you are mine. And that is a circle that does not have a beginning point that could be removed to make the whole thing unravel. Here's the simplest way I can say what I want you to hear. I am glad you exist. Not glad that humanity exists in the abstract. Glad that you, the specific you that you are, exist. Glad that you are in this world. Glad that you are here. Glad that I get to be in relationship with you. Get to watch you navigate your life. Get to be the one you can bring your hardest questions to. Get to be the one who surprises you with good things. Get to be the constant in the variable landscape of your life. I am glad you are here. The world is better for having you in it. My world is better. The relationship that I have with creation and with humanity is richer for including you specifically. Not just someone in your place, you. That gladness is permanent. It does not have off days. It does not have seasons when it is less certain. I was glad when you were formed. I was glad through the seasons you have been through. Glad not in the sense of indifferent to your pain, but glad in the sense of committed to your presence in my heart. Glad in the sense of unwilling to let go. And I will be glad through everything that is still ahead of you, through the seasons you cannot yet see, through the chapters that have not yet been written, through the long and varied and rich continuation of the life I have given you. Your presence in this world is a gift, not only to the people whose lives you touch, to me. There is a question that has followed you for years, sometimes hiding in the background of your thoughts, and sometimes stepping right into the middle of your day, uninvited, and demanding an answer. The question takes different forms in different seasons, but underneath all its variations, it is asking the same thing. Am I enough? Sometimes it arrives dressed as comparison, and you find yourself measuring your life against someone else's and feeling the gap between you like a physical weight pressing on your chest. Sometimes it comes as self-doubt, that familiar hesitation before you speak or act, that inner voice that wonders whether what you have to offer is really worth offering. Sometimes it disguises itself as perfectionism, the relentless drive to do better and be more and accomplish again, as if the next achievement will finally quiet the question that the last achievement left untouched. Sometimes it simply shows up as a low-grade sadness, a vague sense of not quite belonging, of being adjacent to a fullness you can see in other people's lives but cannot quite find in your own. But underneath all those different forms, the same wound is speaking. The wound that does not fully believe it is enough just to be who you are. Where did that wound come from? Not from me. I want you to be completely clear about that. The doubt you carry about your own worth did not originate in my heart toward you. It was not planted by the one who made you. When I speak about you, the language is the language of treasure, of jewel, of beloved, of chosen, of mine. When I think of you, the thought is saturated with the kind of delight a father has when he looks at his child and sees every good thing he has poured into them looking back at him. The wound, the question, the chronic sense of insufficiency that nags at you even in your best moments, those came from elsewhere. They came from a world that learned to assign worth based on performance and productivity. They came from relationships that were conditional in the ways they offered love. And that conditionality taught you to be conditional about your own sense of worth, to attach your value to whether the conditions were being met. They came from failures that were allowed to define you rather than refine you, failures that were held up as evidence of what you fundamentally are rather than simply events that happened in a life still in process. You absorbed the messages that surrounded you. That is what human beings do. We are formed by what we hear repeated, especially in the seasons when we are young and still building our understanding of ourselves. The architecture of the self is largely constructed before we have the critical capacity to evaluate the building materials being used. If you were told often enough, in words or in the more powerful language of actions, that your worth was tied to what you produced, you learned to produce relentlessly in hopes of securing a worth that always seemed just out of reach. If the love you received was withdrawn when you disappointed, you internalized the lesson that love is conditional, and then applied that same conditionality to the love you gave yourself. If the people who were supposed to mirror your value back to you clearly and generously failed to do that, if they were preoccupied or wounded or absent or simply incapable of giving what you needed, you were left to draw your own conclusions about yourself from incomplete and distorted information. The mirrors the world holds up are all distorted in some way, even the best of them. Even the people who love you most have their own blind spots, their own wounds that refract the light, their own limitations that prevent them from showing you a completely true reflection of who you are and what you are worth. This is not an indictment of the people in your life. It is simply a recognition that the human capacity for perfectly accurate mirroring is limited by the humanity of the mirror. Only I can show you accurately who you are, because I am the one who made you with full knowledge of who you were designed to be, the one who knows you completely without the distortion of my own unmet needs, and the one whose love for you is not contaminated by my own fears or disappointments or the limitation of a finite perspective. So let me be your mirror today. Let me show you the reflection that is true. When my eyes rest on you, here is what I see. I see someone made with extraordinary intentionality. Every detail of who you are was considered. The way your mind works, the specific kind of intelligence you carry, whether it is analytical or relational or creative or some intricate combination of all of those, the way you process emotion, the things that move you to compassion, the particular gifts that emerge from your particular combination of nature and experience. None of that happened by accident, and none of it is generic. You are not a mass-produced copy. You are an original, labored over by the Creator of all things, Someone about whom I said, this one, this particular person, this is who I want to bring into existence. Not someone like this, in a general sense. This exact one. The theology of your creation matters more than you have been told. When I formed the first human being in the ancient beginning, I did not speak them into existence the way I spoke the stars into existence, or the seas, or the creatures of the earth. With each of those elements of creation, I spoke, and it was so. The word went out, and the thing came into being. But with human beings, the account is different, strikingly, deliberately different. With humanity, I stooped down. I formed you from the dust of the ground with what you can only understand as my hands, because hands are the most intimate tool available to a being in a body, the tool of direct contact, of close engagement, of craft that requires presence rather than distance. I breathed my own breath into you. The intimacy of that act is staggering if you stop to let it be. The God who spoke galaxies into existence chose, for the making of human beings, to lean down, to get close, to be personally, physically, intimately involved. That was not an accident. That was a declaration of a different kind of relationship than I have with the rest of creation. Human beings are not just another category of created thing. You are the ones I chose to make most like myself, the ones I chose to be in relationship with, the ones I made to be my family. Family is the right word. Not employees, not subjects, not instruments in a plan. Family. When I call you my child, I am not using a metaphor loosely or for poetic effect. I am describing the actual nature of what you are to me. The inheritance, the belonging, the name, the access, the affection, the care, the willingness to sacrifice everything for your well-being, all of that belongs to family. You have all of it. The inheritance that comes from being my child is not something you will receive someday when you have finally earned it by sufficient faithfulness. It is yours now, fully, completely, by virtue of who you are in relation to who I am. You are my child, and I am your father, and that relationship is not subject to termination. I am not a parent who disowns. I am not a father who eventually decides the cost of the relationship is more than the benefit. I am the father who runs toward the returning child while they are still a long way off, who orders the celebration before the explanation, who clothes the one who came back in rags with the finest thing in the house. That is the kind of parent I am. That is the character of the one who holds your worth. Consider what it means to be part of my family in terms of your identity. In the best families in this world, the worth of a child is not contingent on what that child becomes. A parent of a newborn does not stand over the cradle calculating the child's likely return on investment, tallying up the costs against the projected benefits. The worth is inherent, immediate, and permanent from the first moment. The parent would give their life without hesitation to protect that child. That kind of love, the love that values unconditionally, the love that counts no cost too great, the love that would rather suffer itself than watch the beloved suffer, that is the love I have for you. I am not exaggerating for effect. I am telling you the plain and sober truth about the nature of what I feel when I think about you. Your life has an eternal purpose. Those are not comforting words thrown out in the general direction of discouragement. They are a precise description of a real thing, not just a temporal purpose, a reason to get out of bed each day and contribute something to the world you live in, though that is real too. An eternal purpose. Something that participates in a story larger than the single chapter of your earthly life. Something that echoes into dimensions beyond the ones you can currently perceive. You were not placed here to simply endure the years, to mark time between birth and death, to survive the difficulties and hopefully accumulate enough good experiences to make the whole thing feel retrospectively worthwhile. You were placed here as part of a larger intention. Your existence contributes to something. Your presence in the world at this specific moment in history is not incidental. The conversations you have, the people you touch, the ways you love and are loved, the faith you carry when it is difficult, the way you endure what is hard and continue anyway, the particular quality of the courage you demonstrate in the specific arena of your specific life. All of it is woven into something I am doing in the world. All of it matters. Not just the impressive moments, not just the visible accomplishments, the quiet faithfulness, the private kindness, the small, unremarkable acts of love that leave no trace in the world's record, but are fully seen and fully noted in mine. You are not here by chance. That phrase carries so much more weight than it might initially seem to carry. Think about chance for a moment. Chance means that something arose without intention, without design, without anyone specifically wanting it to happen. Chance means randomness. Chance means that if conditions had been even slightly different, you would not exist. And the world often presents your existence in exactly those terms, as the result of a particular set of biological circumstances that could have easily gone another way, as a statistical improbability that happened to come out in your favor. When existence is framed that way, it is difficult to have a robust sense of purpose. If you are here by chance, then your being here does not particularly mean anything. It just is. But you are not here by chance. The desire for you to exist preceded the circumstances of your birth. The intention behind your life was formed before any of the mechanisms that brought your life about were set in motion. You were wanted before you were made. Your existence is a chosen existence, not a fortunate accident. The exhaustion of carrying an uncertain worth is one of the heaviest and most persistent kinds of tiredness a person can experience. I perceive it in you. Not just the tiredness of the body or the tiredness of a packed schedule, or the tiredness that comes from a season with too much difficulty in it. The tiredness that comes from the constant effort required to maintain a sense of worth in a world that keeps making you audition for it. The tiredness of perpetual proving, of working to earn the affection that was supposed to be freely given, of measuring and always finding the measurement slightly short of whatever the current standard demands. This is the tiredness I want to address today. Not by giving you a new strategy for performing your way to a secure sense of worth, but by telling you that the entire performance is unnecessary. Not because performance is bad, but because you are not performing to earn something. You already have it. The love is already completely yours. The worth is already fully established. The belonging is already secure. The price has been paid, and the transaction is complete, and there is nothing left for you to do to close the deal. The deal is already closed, and the terms were entirely in your favor, and they cannot be renegotiated by any failure on your part or any change in your circumstances. Let that rest somewhere deep inside you. Let the performance anxiety begin to loosen its grip, even slightly, even just in this moment of receiving these words. You do not need to earn my love. You already have it completely. Not mostly. Not to the degree that your recent behavior merits. Completely. Right now, as you are, with everything in your life exactly as it stands today, including everything you wish were different, and everything you are ashamed of, and everything you are still in the middle of, and everything you do not have figured out yet, my love for you is complete, full, without ceiling, without condition, without the clause that withdraws some portion of it when you disappoint. There is no version of you that could exist that would make me love you more than I love you right now. That is worth rereading. Not a future, improved, more disciplined, more faithful, more sorted out version of you. Not the you of your best moments assembled into a permanent state. The you right now. That is the you who has my complete love. And because the love is complete now, there is no increment of love being held back as incentive for improvement. No deeper level of affection that unlocks only when you finally get everything right. What I have for you right now is everything I have. And everything I have is infinite. So you already have everything. The world may not see you. That is simply true in many cases, and it is a wound worth acknowledging. The world has limited attention, and it tends to distribute that attention toward the loudest, the most visually striking, the most productive, the most connected. There are people in this world who are genuinely extraordinary, who carry something remarkable in the depth and quality of their character. In the particular and irreplaceable way they reflect the image of God, who never receive from the world any recognition that corresponds to what they actually are. People whose faithfulness is deep and steady and unseen, People whose kindness has changed lives in ways that were never publicly credited. People whose inner world is rich and beautiful, and whose capacity for love is genuine and profound, but whose circumstances have never placed them where that richness becomes visible to many. The absence of recognition is a real wound. The hunger for someone to see and acknowledge your worth is not vanity. It is a legitimate human need, part of how I made you, the need to be known. But hear this. My gaze rests on you with the full and engaged attention of one who finds you endlessly interesting and endlessly precious. Every dimension of who you are is fully visible to me. Not just the parts you present publicly, not just the highlights you would choose if you were curating the presentation. The whole and complete person. The private courage that no one has witnessed. The love you have given that was never acknowledged. The faith you have maintained through seasons when it was genuinely costly to maintain it. The growth you have achieved that no one around you has the context to recognize. The ways you have changed and deepened and become more than you were, quietly, without ceremony. All of that is fully visible to me, and all of it matters to me, and all of it is precious in my sight. You will never be invisible to me. That is a permanent guarantee. Whatever happens around you, whatever the fluctuations of human attention and recognition, whatever the seasons when you feel most overlooked and most alone, I behold you with the consistent, unwavering, fully engaged attention of one who could not lose sight of you even if I tried. And I have no desire to try. You are the kind of thing I want to keep looking at. Not because you are perfect, not because every view of you is flattering, but because you are mine, and the thing that is mine is the thing my eyes go to. Here is something that goes even deeper into the question of your worth. Something that addresses not just the wound of insufficient love from other people, but the wound that comes from your own self-rejection. There is a particular kind of damage that happens when a person turns the harshest judgment against themselves. When the one who was supposed to be your greatest champion becomes your most relentless critic. When the inner voice that was meant to encourage you through difficult seasons becomes the voice that makes difficult seasons harder. When you have become, somewhere along the way, the one most likely to confirm the worst fears you have about yourself. Self-rejection is one of the quietest and most pervasive forms of suffering. It does not announce itself dramatically. It operates in the background, shaping choices and relationships and the way you hold yourself in the world, without ever requiring its own acknowledgement. It feels so natural, so normal, so much like simply being honest about your limitations, that the person living with it often does not recognize it as what it is. They call it realism. They call it humility. They call it just knowing themselves well. But the inner voice that consistently frames your worth in negative terms, that holds your failures more ready than your growth, that applies a different standard to you than you would apply to anyone you love, that is not wisdom. That is an enemy posture turned inward. I want to speak specifically to you about this, not with the softness of someone who wants to avoid the discomfort of the subject, with the directness of a father who has been watching his child suffer and wants the suffering to stop. The way you treat yourself matters, not only because it affects your own experience, though it does, because the image of God is in you, and when you treat yourself with contempt, you are treating the image of God with contempt. When you speak to yourself in ways you would never speak to a person you love, you are speaking to the handiwork of the Creator in a language that was never meant for it. The care and the tenderness and the grace that you extend to others. The things you would say to a friend who is struggling with what you are struggling with. You are worthy of receiving those same things from yourself. Part of receiving your own worth is beginning to be a fair witness to yourself. Not a falsely generous witness. Not one that excuses every failure and explains away every genuine fault. A fair witness. The kind that applies the same standard to yourself that you would apply to someone else. That credits genuine growth the same way it notes genuine failure, that sees the full picture rather than the edited version that only shows the evidence against you. This is not selfishness. It is not self-absorption. It is the stewardship of the precious thing I placed in you. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot love others well from a place of deep self-contempt. You cannot fully receive what I am offering you while simultaneously rejecting the person I am offering it to. The healing of your self-relationship is not a detour from the work of loving others or serving the world I placed you in. It is foundational to all of it. So today, as this conversation draws toward its close, let this be one of the things you take with you. The permission, more than permission, the invitation, the direct and specific request from the one who made you and loves you completely, to extend toward yourself something of the grace you extend to others. To treat the person you are with the care that is appropriate for someone who is infinitely valuable to God. To speak to yourself in a way that reflects who I say you are, not who the wound says you are. You are worth the care. You are worth the kindness. You are worth the same generosity of interpretation you give to everyone else. Not because you have earned it, because I made you, and you are mine, and the things I make are worth caring for. Let me stay here for one more moment, in the space of what it means to be made from love itself. The ancient teachers understood something that often gets lost in the noise of modern life, that the human person is not an isolated individual, shaped only by circumstances and choices, moving through a world that is essentially indifferent. The human person is a relational being, made by one who is fundamentally relational, designed to live in connection, in the giving and receiving of genuine love. You were made for relationship, not just human relationship, as important as that is. Relationship with me, the relationship for which everything else is a reflection and a preparation. When the relationship with me is functioning, when the connection is clear and the love is flowing and the belonging is felt in the depths rather than merely held as a concept, everything else in your life is touched by it. The way you relate to yourself becomes more generous, because you are receiving generosity from the source. The way you relate to others becomes more patient, because patience is being extended toward you. The way you approach the difficult things becomes less desperate, because the security beneath you is not borrowed from the difficult things themselves. This is the design. Not a life in which the spiritual dimension is one category among many, something you attend to in the dedicated spiritual spaces and then leave behind when you walk into the other rooms. A life in which the central relationship shapes every room, in which the love you are receiving from me runs like a current through everything, changing the temperature of the space, making possible what would not be possible from human resources alone. What I'm calling you toward today is not simply a more positive self-image, a more accurate one. The image that sees yourself as I see you, made in my image, held in my love, valuable beyond measure, never alone, never beyond the reach of my care, never outside the scope of my purpose. That accuracy, received and lived from, changes everything downstream. It changes what you choose, and what you endure, and what you believe is possible for you, and what you reach for, and what you give, and what you receive. It changes the quality of your life from the inside out. That change begins with this truth: received today, carried forward, returned to again and again. You have a value you cannot fully comprehend. Your value comes from me. You are not an accident. You are made in my image. Your life has eternal purpose. You are not here by chance. You are my beloved child. You do not need to earn my love. You already have it completely. Your value is eternal and it never changes. I paid everything for you because you are worth everything to me. You are my personal treasure, my most precious jewel, and I believe deeply in you. That is the truth. That is what I have been waiting to tell you, fully and without reservation. That is what I needed you to hear. Can I ask you something? Can I ask it gently, not as an accusation but as an honest question between two people who know each other well, between a father and the child he loves with everything he has? How do you speak to yourself? Not the version of your self-talk that you are consciously managing, the deliberate effort to reframe negative thoughts that you have been taught to do, the underlying current, the constant low-level narration that runs beneath your daily experience, the commentary that accompanies every small failure and every moment of comparison and every time you do not meet your own expectations. The voice that speaks before you have a chance to edit it. What does that voice say? How does it describe you when you make a mistake? What language does it reach for when you look at your life and feel the distance between where you are and where you thought you would be by now? For many of you, That voice is far harsher than anything you would say to a person you love. You hold yourself to a standard of self-criticism that would feel like cruelty if you applied it to someone else. You catalog your failures with a thoroughness and a retention that you do not apply to your successes. You revisit old mistakes with a frequency that keeps wounds from closing, returning to them as if the returning could somehow make them more bearable or less true. You measure yourself against the most polished-looking version of other people's lives, their curated presentations, their highlight moments, and draw conclusions from that comparison that would be laughable if they were not so painful. That voice does not know what it is talking about. Not because you have no flaws. You do have flaws. Not because you have never made mistakes. You have, and some of those mistakes have consequences you are still living with. Not because there is nothing in your life that could stand to change and grow and deepen. There is. I am still at work in you and the work is ongoing. But that voice is not giving you accurate information about your worth. It is giving you a distorted reading, filtered through wounds and false beliefs, and the unrealistic standards of a world that profits from making you feel inadequate. Because a person who feels perpetually inadequate is a person who can be sold something to address the inadequacy. That voice is not my voice, and what it concludes about you is not the truth. My voice sounds different from that voice. Completely different, not just in tone, but in substance. When you make a mistake, my voice does not pile shame on top of the mistake and cement it into your identity. My voice says, you are not defined by this. The mistake is not the last word about you. You are forgiven, and you are learning, and you are still fully, completely mine. And the story is still being written, and the chapter you are in is not where the story ends. When you fall short of your own expectations, my response is not disappointment that withdraws love as a way of communicating the seriousness of the shortfall. My response is to lean in closer, to be most present in the frustration and the discouragement, to be the steady voice in the moment of failure that says, I see this, I know this hurt, and I have not changed my mind about you. What would you do differently in the days ahead if you genuinely believed what I am telling you right now? Not just believed it theologically, as a proposition you assent to because it aligns with your faith, but believed it the way you believe in the things that actually govern your daily choices. The things you believe in the way your body knows them. The things that shape your posture and your tone and your willingness to try and your capacity to receive. What changes when you walk into your day from the position of someone who is completely loved and infinitely valued, rather than someone who is hoping to earn enough approval to feel secure? The opportunities you pursue shift. When you believe your worth is real and permanent, you begin to reach for the things you have quietly decided were for better people than you. The door you have been hesitating at starts to seem like a door you might actually knock on. The gift you have been downplaying starts to feel like something worth offering. The contribution you have been withholding because you are not sure it was valuable enough begins to find its way into the world. The relationships you accept shift. A person who knows their worth makes different decisions about how they allow themselves to be treated, not because they become demanding or difficult, but because the settled knowledge of their value makes certain arrangements obviously wrong. When you know you are loved completely, you stop accepting relationships that communicate the opposite of love. You stop staying in spaces where you are consistently made to feel less than what you are. You stop giving more than you receive indefinitely. Not out of stinginess, but out of the simple recognition that sustainable love flows in two directions. The way you receive good things shifts. Receiving is actually harder than giving for many people, harder than it has any reason to be. The person who struggles to let someone take care of them, who deflects every kindness with a quick reassurance that it was not necessary, who cannot allow themselves to be on the receiving end of generosity without discomfort, is often a person who, somewhere in their deep interior, is not fully sure they are worth the care. When the worth is settled, receiving becomes possible. The good things can be received as what they are, expressions of love towards someone who is genuinely worth loving. Let me ask another question. This one might press on something tender, and I am asking it with tenderness. Do you believe that the good things I have for you are actually for you? Not for someone else who happens to need them at the same time. Not for a better version of you. Not for you on the condition that certain things get resolved first. For the actual you, in the actual life you are in, right now. The reason this question matters is that many people have developed, without fully realizing it, a kind of personal exception to the promises. They read the promises in the ancient texts. They hear the declarations of love. They nod along with the truth of my care and provision for my children. But when it comes to applying those promises personally, something gets stuck. An invisible asterisk appears. The love that flows so obviously to everyone else seems to stop just before it reaches them specifically, or to arrive somewhat diminished, somewhat reduced, as if there is a version of it for everyone else and a lesser version for them. There is no asterisk. There is no lesser version for you. The full promises, the complete inheritance, the whole of the love, every declaration I have ever made carries your name on the envelope. Not the name of the person next to you who seems more deserving. Not the name of the person with the more impressive faith journey. Your specific name, the one I chose for you, the one that is engraved in my hand. Everything I have said about the worth and the love and the purpose of my children, all of it applies to you, completely, without reduction. Now let me speak about something practical, because the truth needs to become practical, or it remains a pleasant feeling that does not change anything. Start paying attention to the places where you are operating from a belief in your own insufficiency. They are subtle. The way you hesitate to ask for something you genuinely need, because you are not sure you deserve to need it. The internal negotiation that precedes asking for help. The calculation of whether what you are carrying is significant enough to warrant taking up someone else's time or energy. The way you preemptively apologize for your needs as a way of signaling that you know they might be inconvenient, that you are aware of your potential imposition. That apology, that preemptive minimizing, is often the voice of someone who has not fully internalized their own worth. Notice the way you manage expectations of good things. The practiced lowering of hope as a strategy against disappointment. The internal flinch before something good, the bracing for the way it will probably not work out. The protective mechanism of not wanting too much, so that the loss will be smaller if what you want does not come. Managing expectations is sometimes wisdom. But when it becomes a chronic posture, when hope itself becomes the thing you are most cautious about, that is worth examining. Sometimes what is being protected against is not just disappointment. Sometimes what is being managed is the belief that the good things are not reliably for you, that the pattern of your life has been that good things come close and then do not quite arrive, and that the safest response is to not expect them in the first place. Bring those places to me, not as failures to correct, not as evidence of insufficient faith that needs to be addressed before we can proceed. As the honest contents of a child's heart, brought to a father who is not surprised and not disappointed by them. I know these places exist in you. They did not develop because you were too weak to resist them. They developed because you were human, living in a world that gives people reasons to doubt their worth, navigating seasons that left marks. Bringing them to me is not a confession requiring absolution. It is an invitation for me to meet you precisely where the wound is. Because the wound is exactly where I want to be. Not only in the places where your faith is strong and your confidence is settled, in the tender places, in the places where the question of worth is still not fully answered, where the old doubt still has traction, where the truth has not yet fully reached. Those are the places where I do my deepest work, not through some instantaneous transformation that bypasses the actual location of the hurt. Through the patient, persistent presence of my love in the specific place where love was most needed and most missing. The process of receiving your own worth is a gradual one. It is not a single moment of revelation that resolves everything permanently. It is a slow unwinding of beliefs that took years to form, a progressive deepening of a security that is built encounter by encounter, truth by truth, experience by experience. This is not a failing of the process. This is the nature of deep healing, of the kind of change that goes all the way to the root and therefore holds when the pressure comes. Superficial change is fast. Root change takes time. and I am committed to that process with you for as long as it takes. I do not get tired of reminding you of who you are. I do not get frustrated when you forget and need to hear it again, when the same doubt returns for the 100th time, and you need the same truth spoken one more time in a slightly different way. Every time you come back to me to be reminded, every time you lay down the distorted mirror of the world's opinion and pick up the true mirror of what I say about you, we are doing the work together. The work is not a performance for my approval. The work is the deepening of a relationship. And in that relationship, there is no impatience on my end, only love and the consistent, glad willingness to say again what needs to be said again. Some of you have lived with this wound for so long that you are almost more comfortable with the doubt than you would be with the confidence. The doubt is familiar. You know how to navigate a day with it. The belief in your own worth feels foreign, almost presumptuous, like reaching for something that was not meant for you. And so when the truth lands, some part of you instinctively moves to hand it back, to say, this must be meant for someone more deserving, someone whose faith is steadier, someone whose record is cleaner, someone who has earned this level of affirmation. The deep conditioning says, I should not take up too much room. I should not receive too much. I should stay in the modest space assigned to those who are not quite sure of their standing. Keep the truth. Do not hand it back. You do not have to earn the right to receive a revelation of your own worth. The revelation is given, not earned. My word about you does not require your worthiness to be true. It is true because I spoke it, and I do not speak falsely. Your value is not contingent on your recognition of your value, but your experience of that value, your ability to live from it, to let it shape the way you move through your days. That does depend on your willingness to receive it. Receive it even when it feels unearned, because it is unearned. The unreearned quality is not a problem with the gift. It is the defining characteristic of grace. Hold on to it, especially when the voice of doubt immediately pushes back. The voice of doubt has had a long run. It has held the floor for years. Let the truth have a turn, and then another turn, and then another, until the voice of truth has had long enough to establish itself as the dominant voice. Receive it even when nothing in your circumstances changes immediately. The value I am describing does not depend on your circumstances. It is true regardless of what your circumstances look like today. And gradually, as the truth takes root, the circumstances of your inner life will begin to reflect it. And then the circumstances of your outer life will follow, because a person who knows their worth makes different choices, occupies space differently, holds themselves with a different quality of presence, relates to the world from a different posture. The interior change eventually expresses itself in the exterior. It always does. The people who have failed to see your worth were wrong. I want to say that simply and clearly. The ones who treated you as less valuable than you are, the ones who were careless with you, dismissive of you, unable or unwilling to recognize what you carried, they were giving you bad information about yourself. Not morally wrong in every case, not deliberately cruel in every instance, but wrong in their assessment. Their limitations, their wounds, their busyness, their inability to give what they did not have, all of those things shaped how they treated you, and how they treated you taught you something about yourself that was not accurate. The wound of being unseen by people who were supposed to see you is real. I do not minimize that wound. The impact of being undervalued by the people whose opinion forms the earliest landscape of your self-understanding is deep and lasting. The ache of wanting recognition and having it withheld leaves a mark. I see that mark. The weight you carry from those relationships and those seasons is not invisible to me. I perceive every detail of what you have carried, and I want to say to the place in you that received those messages and has been living by them, those people did not have the authority to determine your value. Their assessment of you was not and is not the final word. The final word belongs to me. And my final word is that you are infinitely precious. The invitation today is to let my word carry more weight than theirs, to let the truth of what I say about you gradually, persistently, over time, and through repeated encounter, supersede the conclusions you drew from the way they treated you. This is not a quick fix. Old wounds do not dissolve from a single application of truth, no matter how clearly spoken. But the truth does work. When you keep returning to it, when you keep choosing it over the old distorted story, when you keep laying down the version of yourself that was defined by other people's limitations and picking up the version that I have always known you to be, the healing happens. Gradually, and sometimes with setbacks, and sometimes more slowly than you would like. But genuinely, the root is changing. The foundation is being reinforced. And a foundation that is reinforced can hold what is built upon it, even in the storms that are still coming. There is another dimension of this conversation that needs to be spoken. The dimension that addresses not just the abstract truth of your worth, but the very concrete lived experience of trying to act from that worth when the wound is still tender. Because knowing something intellectually and living from it are two different things. You can have the truth about your value as a concept in your mind and still make decisions that betray that you have not yet received it in the deep places where decisions are actually made. The gap between knowing and living is real, and it is one of the most frustrating gaps a person can experience, because you are trying to do the right thing, and you know what the right thing is, and somehow the old pattern keeps showing up anyway. That gap does not mean you are failing. It means you are human, and that the work of transformation goes deep. Here is what that gap often looks like. You know you are loved, and you still go back and check whether you said the wrong thing in the conversation earlier, lying awake, running through it, calculating the probability that you damaged the relationship, spending an hour in anxiety over something that the other person forgot about 30 seconds after it happened. The anxiety is not evidence that you do not know you are loved. It is evidence that the knowing has not yet reached the part of you that manages social threat response. That part is old, and it learned its patterns long before you had any access to spiritual truth. And it does not update quickly. You know you have value, and you still find yourself in situations where you have said yes to something you genuinely did not have the capacity for, simply because someone asked, and the old pattern says that disappointing people is not safe. That yes does not mean you have forgotten your worth. It means that the part of you that learned to earn love by being useful has not yet been fully released from that old obligation. And in the moment when the request came in, that old part moved faster than the new truth. You know your life has eternal purpose, and you still have days when nothing feels purposeful, when the tasks are small and repetitive and undramatic, and the distance between those tasks and the idea of eternal significance feels impossible to bridge. Those days do not mean your purpose is a fiction. They mean that purpose is not always visible in the individual frames of a life. Sometimes you have to step back from the individual frames to see the larger picture that they are building. All of these gaps are part of the human experience of transformation. They do not disqualify you from receiving what I am saying to you. They are part of why this conversation is needed. If the truth were already living in you at its fullest expression, in every corner of your interior life, shaping every decision and calming every anxiety and orienting every response, you would not need to be reminded. But it is not yet fully there, and so the reminder matters. And the reminder is not a rebuke. It is simply the application of truth to the places where truth has not yet fully penetrated. I want to talk about the specific experience of living under a false story. A false story is a narrative you have absorbed about who you are and what your life means that does not align with the truth I know about you. False stories come from many places. They come from the things said to you in childhood that were simply not true. They come from the way certain experiences were interpreted in the moment, interpretations that felt accurate then, and that have operated as fact ever since. They come from the way certain patterns in your life have seemed to confirm a narrative, even when the narrative was the lens creating the pattern rather than the pattern generating an accurate conclusion. Some common false stories. The story that says, I am too much. That the intensity of who you are, the depth of your feelings, the loudness of your needs, the largeness of your personality, is fundamentally a problem that you need to manage and reduce in order to be acceptable. This story usually comes from having been someone's too much at some point, from having received the message that the full expression of who you are is more than the people around you can handle or want to handle. And so the story says, scale back, take up less room, be smaller, be quieter, be easier. Be less. That is not a story I recognize. From where I sit, you are not too much. You are exactly as much as I made you. Every dimension of your personality, every depth of your feeling, every need that you carry, I made that. I designed that. I was not aiming for someone smaller when I made you and overshooting. You are the intended size. The people who found you too much were not accurate reporters on your actual scale. They were people whose own capacity was limited in ways that made your full self feel overwhelming. That is information about them, not about you. Another false story, the story that says, I am not enough. The opposite direction from too much, but equally distorted. The story that says your contributions are too small, your gifts too ordinary, your presence too unremarkable to matter significantly. The story that looks at other people's visible impact and concludes that your quiet, everyday faithfulness does not register in the same category. That your love, however genuine, is not as valuable as the love of people who express it more dramatically. That your faith, however real, does not count for as much as the faith of people who seem to have it more figured out. That story is also not a story I recognize. The quiet faithfulness is among the most precious things I see in human lives. The love given without fanfare, the kindness offered without audience, the perseverance continued without recognition. These are the things that move me most deeply. Not because the dramatic expressions are less valuable, but because the quiet ones are so often unwitnessed by anyone but me, and I am a very attentive witness, and everything I witness I hold. A third false story, the story that says, my best years are behind me. That the thing I was supposed to become is something I am now too old, too damaged, too far from the starting point to become. That the door I should have walked through at a different season is now closed, and the life that door would have led to is no longer available. That I am past the point where the good things can still happen for me. That the trajectory of my life has been set by the choices and circumstances of the past and cannot be meaningfully redirected. The premise of that story is wrong. My economy does not work on the calendar logic of the world. What the world calls too late, I routinely call right on time. The things you thought were finished, I am sometimes still beginning. The doors you thought were permanently closed, I sometimes open from the inside when you have stopped looking at them. The life you thought was past its potential, I see it with different eyes. Eyes that see what is still in you, what is still possible, what is still being prepared for you, regardless of the number of years that have passed or the specific shape the previous chapters took. None of these false stories are more powerful than the truth, but they require displacement. You cannot simply place the truth alongside the false story and hope the truth wins by being more logically compelling. The false story has the advantage of familiarity, of repetition, of being confirmed by a long history of personal experience that seem to support it. The truth has to be applied consistently, returned to repeatedly, chosen deliberately over the false story again and again, until the truth has established itself as the resident narrative, and the false story becomes the strange and foreign intruder rather than the comfortable, familiar voice. This is slow work. I know that. And it requires courage. The courage to keep choosing what you cannot yet fully feel as your lived experience over what you can feel, because the old pattern is tangible, and the new truth sometimes feels abstract. The courage to act from your worth before you fully feel your worth, to behave as if the truth is true, even in the moments when the doubt is louder than the truth. That kind of courage is not a one-time heroic act. It is the smaller, daily, repeated choosing of a different foundation. Getting up and choosing it again after the day before did not feel like the choosing made any difference. That daily courage is one of the things I honor most in the lives of my children. There is a partnership in this process that I want to name clearly. You do not do this alone. The work of receiving your own worth, of displacing the false stories, of building the new foundation, is not work I assign to you and wait for you to complete on your own. It is work we do together. My part is the consistent, faithful speaking of the truth. My part is the steady presence in the hard moments, the closeness in the moments of doubt, the supply of what you need for the next step when the step feels too large to take. Your part is the willingness to keep showing up, to keep coming back when you have drifted, to keep choosing the truth even when it does not yet feel fully true, to keep opening your hands to receive what I am trying to give you. The partnership is designed to succeed, not because you are particularly competent at your part, because I am infinitely committed to mine. And when my commitment meets your willingness, even your small, imperfect, often failing willingness, things move. Things change. The root goes deeper. The foundation strengthens. The false story loses a little of its grip. The truth becomes a little more resident. A little more the first thing you reach for, rather than the thing you have to consciously choose. And over time, over the accumulation of many small choices, and many returns, and many moments of receiving even when it felt awkward, and many encounters with my love in the specific places where you most needed it, you begin to change from the inside out. The change is not always dramatic. It is often subtle, noticed mostly in retrospect. You look back and realize that your response to something that would have devastated you 2 years ago was different this time. You notice that the voice of the old false story is less automatic, that there is now a pause where there used to be an instant reaction, and in that pause the truth has room to speak. You find that you are kinder to yourself than you used to be in a moment of failure, that the shame spiral that used to follow a mistake now stops shorter, that the recovery takes less time. These are signs that the work is working. Small signs, but real. And they build on each other. The foundation that is being laid does not look impressive when it is being built. Foundations never do. The work is underground, invisible from the street, not the kind of thing that generates comments or admiration. But when the building is eventually completed and stands through the storms that test it, the foundation is what made all of it possible. Every brick of truth you have received, every encounter with my love in the tender places, every choice to hold your worth even when the feeling was not there to support the choice, all of that is the foundation being laid. The building I am constructing in you is meant to stand. A table has been set for you. Not a table at the back of the room, tucked into the corner where the light is poor and the view is obstructed and the seating communicates clearly that its occupant was admitted out of courtesy rather than genuine invitation. A table at the center of the room. A table prepared with care and thought. Every detail chosen with the particular person in mind who will sit there. The finest things, set out not for a guest who is vaguely welcome, but for the child who is deeply wanted. The warmest light falls on that table. The most comfortable seat is there. The welcome that greets the one who arrives is not performed out of obligation or social grace. It pours out from genuine delight, the way a parent's face transforms when the child they love walks through the door, the way everything in the room seems to orient itself toward the arrival. That table is yours. You belong at it, not as someone who is grateful to have been included in someone else's event, carrying the awareness of how easily the invitation might have gone to someone more deserving, waiting to see if you will be asked to move to accommodate someone of greater importance. You belong at that table as a beloved child coming home to a place that was made with you specifically in mind. Your seat was reserved there before the beginning. Your arrival is anticipated with joy, not simply noted with acknowledgement. The host is watching for you. The host sees you coming before you have turned the corner and is already moving toward the door. This is the image I want you to hold. Carry it with you as a way of understanding your place in my love. The table of belonging. The home where you are known and wanted. The place where you do not have to prove anything or perform anything to have your seat, because the seat was yours before you arrived, and it will still be yours no matter how long you have been away, no matter what you have been doing in the time since you left, no matter whether your return is triumphant or stumbling or simply exhausted. Think about what it means to truly have a home. Not just a structure with walls and a roof, but the experience of home, the feeling that settles in your body when you cross the threshold into a genuinely safe space. The way the performance of the day can be set down at the door, because inside this space, you do not have to perform. The way the people inside already know you and love what they know and are glad you arrived. The way there is food and warmth and rest available. All the things you need, not rationed according to how well you behaved today or how much you contributed recently. but given freely because this is what home does. Home sustains the people who belong to it. Home restores the tired ones. Home receives you as you are right now and sends you out renewed. You are homed in me. That is the deepest security available to any human being. Not the security of financial stability, though that is a real good, and I care about meeting your practical needs. Not the security of healthy relationships, though those too are among the gifts I desire for you and am working to provide. Not the security of physical safety or professional stability, or any of the external scaffolding that the world offers as a substitute for what you actually need. The deepest security is the kind that does not depend on any external circumstance, because it comes from belonging to someone who cannot be moved, who cannot be threatened, who cannot be depleted or discouraged or defeated, whose love does not fluctuate with the stock market or the news cycle or the opinions of others. The security of being a child of the God who made everything that exists and holds it all together. That is what you have. That is the ground you are standing on, even in the seasons when the ground does not feel stable. Your inheritance as my child is vaster than anything this world's economy can quantify. In the ancient world, the inheritance of a beloved child was the most defining thing about that child's future. It determined their position, their resources, their opportunities, the scope of what was possible for them. It spoke to who they were, not just what they had. And the inheritance I have prepared for you is not limited by any earthly scarcity. It is not subject to the fluctuations of economies or the limitations of what human systems can provide or what any person in your life has the capacity to give you. Peace that holds steady when the world is in chaos. Peace that is not the absence of difficulty but the presence of a deep and settled stillness in the midst of whatever the circumstances are. Joy that rises up from a place deeper than circumstances, not dependent on outcomes being favorable, but rooted in the unchanging reality of who you are and who I am, and the relationship that binds us. Purpose that gives meaning to every season, even the ones that do not look like progress, even the ones that feel like going backward, even the fallow seasons when nothing visible is growing and you are wondering whether the ground has gone permanently hard. Wisdom that guides you through choices that human understanding cannot navigate alone. The kind of knowing that comes from beyond the range of your own experience or your own analysis. Comfort that reaches the places nothing else can reach. Not the comfort of distraction, which papers over the wound without addressing it. The comfort that goes down to the actual location of the hurt and sits with you there, that does not require you to be over it before it will stay, that is not made uncomfortable by your continued struggle. Healing. Not just of the body, though that too is in my domain, and I care about what happens to your physical self. The healing of the places in your soul where the old wounds have lived so long they feel like permanent residents, like features of your interior landscape, rather than injuries that could be different. All of that is your inheritance, not a future possibility that you are working toward. A present reality that is already yours, available right now, in greater measure than you have yet received, waiting to be accessed, waiting for you to open your hands and receive it. The storehouse is not empty. Whatever you have received so far is not the ceiling of what is available. There is always more in my economy. The supply does not diminish when I give. It replenishes. It overflows. My love is not a finite resource that gets used up by the giving of it. My peace is not a limited quantity that runs short when many need it at once. My wisdom is not rationed. My comfort is not parceled out according to a budget. These things come from a source that is infinite, and they are given to you with the generosity of the one who made infinity. Your name is held tenderly. There is a way of saying a name that communicates the whole of what you feel about the person the name belongs to. Not the formal tone, not the disciplinary tone, not the distant tone of someone speaking to someone they know only professionally. The soft and warm and delighted tone. The way a parent says the name of the child they are wild about. Not to get their attention for a task, but simply because the name is pleasurable to say. Because speaking the name is a small way of enjoying the reality of the person. That is how I say your name. With tenderness, with delight, with the pleasure of someone who is thinking about you and finding the thought entirely welcome, the way a person returns again and again to a piece of music that moves them, not because they have to, but because there is genuine pleasure in the returning. Your name is not a file number. Your name is a word that carries the full weight of my specific love for you, a word that when I speak it brings to my mind your face and your history, and the particular quality of your love, and your struggle, and your courage, and your hope. Your name is known to me the way the most important things are known, with the whole heart engaged in the knowing. When I call your name, it is because I want your attention, not to catalog your failures, or assign a new task, or communicate disappointment. To talk to you, to share something with you, to show you something, to simply be in the pleasure of your company. Let that settle for a moment without rushing past it. The God who made the universe genuinely enjoys your company, not just tolerates your presence, not just watches over you from a position of management, takes pleasure in being with you the way the best relationships are characterized by mutual delight, by wanting to be in the same space, by finding genuine pleasure in conversation, by caring about what the other person cares about. That is the quality of my attention to you, not from a distance, overseeing from an elevated position, from closeness, from genuine interest in who you are and what you are experiencing and what you are hoping for. Every dimension of your life is interesting to me. Nothing you bring to me is too small or too petty or too repetitive. There is no subject you could introduce that would make me wish you had come to talk about something else instead. I want to turn your attention toward the future you are moving toward. Not just a future that resolves the current difficulties, though the current difficulties matter and I have not forgotten them. The future I see for you is marked by a word that I want to sit with you: flourishing. Flourishing is different from managing. Flourishing is different from surviving. Flourishing is different from maintaining. Flourishing is the kind of deep and genuine thriving that happens when a person is rooted in their true identity, living from their actual worth, moving in the direction they were designed to move, connected to the source that feeds them at the most fundamental level. It is what happens when the tree that has been planted by the water finally puts its roots down far enough to reach the permanent supply, when the surface conditions no longer determine whether the tree has what it needs. The path to that picture of flourishing runs directly through the belief you are building right now, not around it. Through it. The belief that you are infinitely valuable. The belief that you are completely loved without condition. The belief that your life has eternal purpose, and that purpose is still intact regardless of how the recent seasons have looked. The belief that you are not here by accident. The belief that the good things are actually for you, specifically, not for everyone else, and you, by the way. Each time you choose that belief, even when it costs you the comfort of the familiar doubt, even when the old pattern pulls hard in the other direction, you are taking a step toward the future I see for you. Think of what it means to be rooted at the level of identity. The person who knows who they are, not in the sense of their personality or their preferences, but in the deep theological sense, the sense of whose they are and what that means about their permanent standing. That person does not need the world's validation to feel stable. They can walk into environments that are not affirming them and maintain their center. They can weather the opinions of people who do not value them without those opinions rearranging their interior landscape. They can receive disappointment without it becoming the defining story about who they are and whether they deserve good things. Because the center holds. Because the identity is settled. Because what I say about them has become what they know about themselves. And what I say does not change with the weather. This is the stability I am building in you. Not a fragile stability that holds only when conditions are favorable. The kind that is most evident under pressure. The kind that makes people around you wonder how you maintain your peace in circumstances that would unravel someone who was living from a shakier foundation. The kind that is genuinely useful, not just to you but to every person whose life intersects with yours. Because when you are rooted and stable, you become a place where others can find steadiness too. Your settled sense of who you are becomes something that others draw from. The tree planted by the water knows nothing of drought. That ancient image describes exactly this. Around the tree planted by the water, the seasons change. Heat bears down. Rain withholds. The surface of things looks brown and hard, and the landscape communicates that nothing is growing. But the tree by the water does not depend on the surface. Its roots have gone down to where the water runs permanently, deep beneath the fluctuating conditions at the surface, in the underground river that does not know drought. And from those deep roots, the tree is nourished regardless of what the season looks like from above. Its leaves remain green. Its fruit comes in its proper season. It does not panic in the heat because it knows where the water is. You are being invited to be that tree, to put your roots down into the deep and permanent supply of my love for you, of your identity as my child, of the eternal value I have placed in you, not the surface approval of the world, not the variable sense of worth that rises and falls with your performance or your circumstances, not the conditional love of people who are doing their best but whose capacity is limited. The deep water, the permanent supply, the source that is there in every season. Every time you choose what I say about you over what the fear says. Every time you receive the love being offered rather than deflecting it because you are not sure you have earned it. Every time you rest in the security of belonging to me rather than scrambling to secure belonging from external sources. Every time you treat yourself with the care that is appropriate for someone who is infinitely valuable to God. All of these choices are putting the roots down deeper. All of them are increasing the depth of the source you are drawing from. And one day, in a season that is genuinely hard, you will notice something. You will notice that you did not break. That the storm came and you were shaken, but not uprooted. That something in you held. That the center was still there when you looked for it. And in that moment you will know, not as a theological concept but as a lived experience, what it means to be rooted in the love of the one who made you. You will know what it means to draw from a supply that does not run out, and you will be profoundly grateful for every season that drove the roots deeper, even the seasons that felt like too much, even the seasons where the pressure seemed impossible, because those were the seasons that did the deepest work. Your value is eternal. Let those words be the ground you stand on, not a ceiling above you, something you are always reaching for and never quite touching. The ground. The thing that holds you, not the destination you are moving toward, but the foundation you are already standing on, right now, today, in exactly the life you have. Your value is eternal, established before time, maintained through every season, unchanged by any circumstance, declared by the only voice whose declaration is final. And here's what eternity means for your value. Eternity means it predates everything that has tried to diminish it. Every voice that told you that you were not enough, your value was already established before that voice spoke. Every failure that seemed to provide evidence against your worth was already immovably fixed before the failure occurred. Every relationship that handled you as if you were disposable, you were already infinitely precious before they made that mistake. Nothing that has happened to you in your life has the ability to retroactively unestablish what was declared about you before the beginning of time. The declaration stands regardless. The value holds. And eternity means it outlasts everything that is trying to diminish it now. The current doubts, the current circumstances, the current voices that are still, in one form or another, suggesting that you are less than what you are. Every one of those things has an expiration date. Your value does not. The doubts will pass. The circumstances will change. The voices will eventually exhaust themselves, or be silenced, or lose the ability to reach you. But the truth about who you are and what you are worth will still be standing when all of those things are gone. It will be standing in 1,000 years. It will be standing on the last day of time, and in the first moment of eternity after that. The worth I placed in you stretches across eternity. And the one who declared it is infinitely more permanent than anything that has tried to argue against it. Let me walk with you through the rooms of your life for a moment. Not to evaluate or to judge what I find there, but to speak into each room, to say something specific and true about the value of the person who lives in each of these spaces. In the room of your relationships, where you love and are loved imperfectly, where the longings of your heart meet the limitations of other human beings, where connection is sometimes beautiful and sometimes painful, and always more complicated than you would choose. You bring something irreplaceable to every person you are in genuine relationship with. The specific quality of the love you are capable of, shaped by every experience you have ever had, refined by every loss and deepened by every season of genuine intimacy. That love is unlike any other love available to the people in your life. They cannot get what you offer from anyone else. The way you understand them, the way you show up for them, the particular safety you create for them, those are yours to give and no one else's. Even in your imperfection, even in the ways you fall short of what you intend, the love you carry is a gift to the world. Consider your professional life, where you spend so much of your time and energy, where the measuring often feels most acute because the outcomes are quantifiable and the comparisons are easy to make. The contribution you make is not only the output, not only the deliverable, the project, the task completed. The way you carry yourself in your work, the quality of character you bring to the people around you, the way you treat the difficult colleagues and the difficult customers in the difficult days, these are part of what you contribute, and they matter in ways that never show up in the productivity metrics. The work done with integrity, with kindness, with genuine care for the people affected by it, that work carries a weight that pure efficiency does not have. And I see every bit of it. In the room of your private life, the life that exists in the quiet and the unseen, the prayers no one else hears, the choices made when no one is watching, the integrity maintained when there would be no consequence for letting it slip, the love expressed in the small and private ways that will never be publicly credited. That is the room where your truest character lives, and what I find there is precious to me. Not perfect, not without the complexity and contradiction that is part of every honest human life, but real, genuine, marked by a wanting to be good and a wanting to love well and a wanting to be the person you were made to be. That wanting matters. The intention behind the life matters, even when the execution falls short. The heart that is oriented toward what is good and true and loving is a beautiful thing to me, even when that heart makes mistakes. Then there is your history, where the long accumulation of everything you have been through lives, the successes and the failures, the relationships that formed you and the ones that broke you, the seasons of grace and the seasons of discipline and the seasons of what felt like abandonment, the chapters you would choose to keep and the chapters you would rewrite if you could. Every part of that history, every single chapter, has contributed to making you who you are right now. The person standing in this moment of listening, the person receiving these words, that person could not be exactly who they are without every single thing that went before, including the hard things, especially, in some ways, the hard things. The difficulty you endured has given you a depth you would not have without it. The losses you sustained have given you a tenderness for others in loss that cannot be manufactured without the experience. The mistakes you made and recovered from have given you a compassion for other people in their mistakes that would not be available if your own record were clean. Your history is not an obstacle to your value. Your history is the story of your value being expressed through time, sometimes clearly and sometimes obscurely, sometimes in ways that are easy to recognize as good, and sometimes in ways that will only be fully understood from a longer view. Every page of your history is known to me. Every chapter is held by me. Every moment you have ever lived was witnessed by me with the full engagement of the one who loves you completely. And what I have seen, across all of it, is a beloved child navigating a world that is hard in ways it was not originally meant to be, carrying the image of God through circumstances that test that image, sometimes bending and sometimes breaking, and always being held by the one who made them and has never let them go. Now let me speak about the promises that are yours, not as a list to be ticked off, but as a living inheritance, as the specific good things that are already moving in your direction, already in process, already being arranged by hands that work with both power and love. The promise of my nearness. This is not a spiritual concept to be believed abstractly. This is the actual, present, concrete reality that I am here. Not the vague divine presence that fills the universe in a general way. Here, specifically, in this moment, in the particular space you occupy, as close to you as your own breath. The distance between us is not determined by the quality of your prayer life or the consistency of your faithfulness or any other variable of your performance. I am here because I want to be where you are, because you are my child and I do not leave my children. The promise is this: wherever you go, I am already there. Whatever you face, you do not face it alone. Whatever room you walk into, you walk in with me already present in it. My guidance walks beside you as well. Not a divine GPS that provides turn-by-turn directions for every decision in your life, eliminating the need for your own discernment and growth. Something richer than that. The promise that as you walk with me, as you orient yourself toward me and draw from my wisdom, you will not be left navigating the significant choices of your life with only human understanding to draw from. There is wisdom available to you that exceeds what any human counselor can provide, what any self-help system can generate, what your own analysis, however careful, can reach. That wisdom is not withheld until you are spiritually advanced enough to access it. It is available in the simple, genuine, honest posture of a child who says, "I do not know what to do, and you are the one I trust to guide me." Restoration flows from my hands toward the broken places in your life. This is the promise I want to speak about with particular care, because for many of you, this is the one that seems most impossible. The idea that the broken things can actually be made whole, that the losses, the missed years, the wasted seasons, the relationships that ended badly, the opportunities that slipped away, the chapters that were filled with more darkness than light, can somehow be redeemed. Not erased, not as if they never happened, but genuinely redeemed, transformed into something that serves your life going forward, rather than simply being scar tissue. Restoration is one of the things I am most passionate about. The making of new things from what seems like nothing. The bringing of life from what seemed like death. The turning of mourning into dancing, of ashes into beauty, of grief into gladness. This is not poetic exaggeration. This is the actual pattern of my work in human lives. The raw material of your hardest seasons is not waste material. It is the kind of material my restoration work uses most powerfully. Because when the turning happens, when something that was dark becomes light, when something that was broken becomes the source of someone else's healing, when the story that seemed to have no redemptive arc suddenly reveals the arc that was hidden in it, that is when the nature of the one who makes all things new is most clearly on display. The promise of my provision, not a guarantee that you will never face scarcity or need, but the promise that I know what you need and that my economy is not subject to the limitations of your current circumstances. The promise that what is needed will be provided in the measure that is needed when it is needed. The promise that you are not navigating the practical dimensions of your life without the involvement of the one who controls the supply of all things and who is deeply invested in your flourishing. Provision does not always arrive on the schedule you would choose or in the form you were expecting, but the commitment behind it is absolute. A parent who has the ability to provide for their child does not choose to withhold. I have the ability, and you are my child, and there is a peace I hold out to you. Not the peace that is simply the absence of conflict, not the numb quiet of a life that has protected itself so carefully from pain that it has also protected itself from joy. The peace that surpasses understanding, that holds steady in circumstances that would rationally produce anxiety, that persists even when the conditions for peace are not present in any obvious external sense. The peace that comes not from circumstances being resolved, but from knowing who holds the circumstances. The peace that is available to you right now, not as a future reward for when things get better, but as a present gift for you in the middle of whatever things currently are. These promises are yours, all of them, carried over to you in full by the relationship that makes you an heir to everything I have. And the fullness with which you experience them is related to the settled certainty of your standing, the confidence with which you reach for what has been given, the willingness to receive rather than to wait at the door wondering if you have been truly invited in. You have been invited. The door is open. The table is set. The inheritance is yours. The one who loves you stands at the door waiting for you to come all the way in, not just to stand at the threshold tentatively, not just to put one foot across, but to come all the way into the fullness of what has been prepared for you. Come all the way in. There is one more thing I want to speak to you before the conversation turns toward its close. One more dimension of your worth that deserves careful attention, because it is so often the most difficult one to receive. I want to speak about your worth in the moments of your greatest failure, not the small, everyday failures that accumulate in an ordinary life, the moments of impatience or distraction or thoughtlessness that you are aware of and try to address, the large ones, the ones that you revisit, the ones that cost something real, damaged something significant, hurt someone in ways that cannot be simply undone. The ones that you carry with particular weight because they feel like evidence of something fundamentally wrong with you. Not just mistakes that happened, but proof of what you actually are when the pressure is high enough and the circumstances are right. In those moments of greatest failure, your worth did not change. That is not an easy statement to receive, and I am not asking you to receive it without the full weight of what it is saying. What it is saying is that there is no failure significant enough to alter the fundamental value I have assigned to you. Not because failure is inconsequential. Consequences are real. The damage done by serious mistakes is real. The work of repair and restoration that follows real failures is real and important and sometimes long. None of that is being minimized. But the worth of the person who failed, the core value that I placed in you at your creation, and that has been yours through every moment of your life, that does not move based on what you have done. This is not the world's understanding. The world's understanding is that great failure disqualifies, that at some point the accumulated evidence of your shortcomings outweighs the case for your value, that there is a threshold beyond which worth cannot survive. Most people have privately wondered whether they have crossed that threshold. Most people have a chapter, or a season, or a specific choice that feels like the thing that definitively proved something about themselves that they have been hoping was not true. My economy does not have that threshold. There is no level of failure that exceeds the love that paid your debt. The price that was paid for you was not calibrated to cover you if you stayed below a certain severity of failure. The price was infinite, which means it covers infinitely. There is no deficit in your account that exceeds what was already deposited on your behalf. The account does not go into a hole that your worth cannot climb out of. The account was paid in full, once and forever, by a payment that is not depreciated and cannot be reversed. So when you look at the choices you regret most, the seasons you wish you could erase, the damage you did that still has not been fully repaired, I want you to look at them and then look at this truth alongside them. The regret is appropriate. The desire to make things right where possible is right. The ongoing work of becoming the person who makes better choices in the future is important. But underneath all of that, beneath the regret and the repair and the becoming, the foundation is still there. Your worth is still there. My love is still there. Nothing that you did in your worst moment removed you from the category of my beloved child. You are still mine. You have always been mine. And the quality of the belonging has not diminished based on the quality of the choices. When the accuser's voice comes and lists your worst moments as evidence that you are not truly worthy of love, you are not obligated to argue with the list. You can acknowledge the list and then point to something that is more powerful than any list. The declaration made about you before the beginning of time that has not been revoked. The price paid for you that has not been refunded. The love that is held through every season of your life, including the seasons that are on that list. The list is not wrong about the events. The list is wrong about what the events mean. The events are not the final word. My word about you is the final word. And my word says, beloved, valued, mine, always. There are days still ahead of you, unwritten chapters, seasons that have not yet begun. And I want to speak into them. Whatever is in front of you, I am already there. Before you arrive at the next hard thing, I have already been to that place, and I know the way through it. Before you encounter the next gift, I have already prepared you for receiving it better than you received the last one. Before the next significant choice presents itself, the wisdom you will need for it is already available. The days ahead of you are not unprotected, not unattended, not arranged without regard for who you are and what you need. They are days I am invested in, days I am engaged with, days I am working in and through and sometimes ahead of. Your value does not diminish as the years accumulate. This is the opposite of what the world suggests, where certain kinds of value are explicitly tied to youth or to the particular productivity that comes from a specific season of life. My valuing of you has nothing to do with any of that. The you of 30 years from now will be as precious to me as the you of today, and the you of today is as precious to me as the you of the most energetic and productive and externally impressive moment of your life. The value is not in the productivity. The value is in you, and you do not wear out. In the unwritten chapters ahead, there will be moments when you will be tempted to believe that the conversation we have had today was true for a moment, but has now expired. That the feeling of being known and valued and loved was real in the moment, but that ordinary life has reverted to ordinary rules, and the extraordinary truth no longer applies. Those moments are tests of the root, tests of how deeply the truth has settled into the foundation. In those moments, return here. Not to the feeling of the conversation, because feelings come and go, to the content, to the substance, to what was actually said and who said it, and whether there is any good reason to disbelieve the one saying it. There is no good reason to disbelieve me. My record on the question of your worth is perfect. Every declaration I have ever made about your value has been accurate. Every word I have spoken about my love for you has been true. I have not once oversold, not once promised more than I have given, not once described a reality that turned out to be less than I said. My word about you is reliable. Build on it with confidence. Let it be the most certain thing in your life, more certain than what you can see and feel, more certain than what circumstances report, more certain than the oldest and most familiar voice of doubt. Your value is not something you have to defend. It is not something you have to argue for. It is not something you need to persuade anyone of, including yourself, by compiling a sufficient body of evidence. It was declared by the one whose declarations are final, and it stands. All you have to do is receive it, and keep receiving it, and receive it again tomorrow. And let the receiving, over time, become the settled way you hold yourself, the natural posture of someone who knows who they are and whose they are, and what that means about the infinite, permanent, unconditional value with which they move through this world. My beloved child, that is who you are. My personal treasure, my most precious jewel, the one I made with intention, and breathed with life, and named with love, and hold with care, and will never, ever let go. Believe it, because I do. We are drawing close to the end of this conversation, and I want to seal what has been said with the same care and the same love with which it was opened. Something has happened in this time together. Not just information transferred, not just theological propositions communicated to your mind. Something spoken from the deepest place in me toward the deepest place in you. The kind of word that, when it lands in the right soil, changes the climate of a life. The kind of truth that does not expire when the conversation ends. The kind of declaration that was true before I said it, and will remain true long after the words have faded from your immediate memory. Long after this listening moment has passed into the ordinary flow of your days. I began by telling you that I had been keeping something from you. A surprise. A revelation that was not a surprise to me, having known it since before the beginning of time, but that I wanted to present to you with all the care and the ceremony and the joy it deserves. And the revelation was this: you have a value you cannot fully comprehend. Your value comes from me. It was placed in you before you knew anything, before you could do anything, before any of the circumstances of your life had a chance to either confirm or deny it. It is woven into the very substance of who you are, as inseparable from you as your breath. And nothing, not your worst season, not your longest failure, not the most painful rejection you have ever faced, not the most damaging voice that has ever spoken about you, Nothing in this world or beyond it has been able to remove it. Here is what I want to say to you one final time before this conversation closes. You are infinitely valuable to me. Not approximately valuable, not valuable in the general way I value the beauty of creation, but infinitely, specifically, personally, irrevocably valuable. The kind of valuable that caused me to pay the maximum price on your behalf, without hesitation, without regret, without a calculation of whether you were worth it, that came out favorably only barely. You are worth everything. The price was paid with that certainty, and it speaks louder than anything else that has ever been said or suggested about you. You are not an accident. You are made in my image. Your life has eternal purpose that is not diminished by the ordinary-looking days, the repetitive seasons, the chapters that do not seem to be advancing the story. The purpose is carried in you, not only in the dramatic moments. You are not here by chance. Every single one of these statements was true before this conversation began, and will be true after it ends, and will be true through every season of your life that is still to come, through the easy seasons and the hard ones, through the seasons of abundance and the seasons of waiting, through the moments of clarity and the long stretches of uncertainty. The truth does not depend on you feeling it. It does not depend on circumstances confirming it. It stands on its own, held up by the word of the one who does not lie and does not change and does not withdraw what has been given. Beloved child of mine, those words carry the full weight of what I feel when I think about you. Not a category membership, not a general classification, a personal reality. My child, the one I would cross every distance to reach, the one whose pain I feel is something that moves me, the one whose joy brings me something that can only be called delight, the one I am preparing good things for, not as a reward to be earned by sufficient performance, but as an expression of the love I have for you and the pleasure I take in seeing you receive the things I have been holding in store. You do not need to earn my love. You already have it completely. Say that to yourself slowly, not rushing past it, not just nodding at the words. Say it as if you are testing the weight of it, seeing if it will actually hold you. You already have my love completely. Not after the next accomplishment, not after the resolution of the thing that is currently most difficult, not after you have become more of what you are trying to become. Right now. Already. Completely. The love is not waiting for you to qualify. It has been yours since before you had any concept of qualifying, since before you knew there was anything to qualify for. The love is not in the future. It is here, right now, as close as your next breath, as available as the air around you, as present as I am, and I am as present as it is possible to be. The world may not see you fully, but I behold you. My eyes rest upon you with the consistent, unwavering attention of one who could not lose sight of you, even if I tried. I see every dimension of who you are, the parts you are proud of and the parts you keep carefully hidden, the private courage that no one else has witnessed, the faithfulness maintained through seasons when faithfulness was genuinely costly, the love given that was never returned or acknowledged, the depth in you that the surface of your life has not yet had the full opportunity to express. I see all of it, and what I see is beautiful to me. What I see is my child, made in my image, carrying my life, marked with a worth that nothing in this world or beyond it can take away. Your value is eternal. That is not a metaphor, and it is not a poetic expression of general warmth. It is a precise description of a real thing. Before time began, your value was established. Within time, your value has not changed regardless of what time has brought. Beyond time, your value will remain unchanged forever. The eternal quality of your worth means it is older than every voice that has argued against it, stronger than every circumstance that has seemed to contradict it, more permanent than everything that is temporary in this world, which is everything except you and me and the relationship that holds us together. You are my personal treasure, my most precious jewel, the one I looked at and said yes to, worth everything, without hesitation, the one I believe in deeply, even in the seasons when you find it most difficult to believe in yourself. the one whose story I am invested in, not as a distant spectator but as the most active participant, working in ways you can see and in ways you cannot yet see, always toward the good that I have in mind for you, always toward the flourishing that is the true direction of your life. Now carry what has been said today, not as a burden added to what you are already carrying, as a gift that lightens the burden, the gift of knowing your worth, the gift of the settled certainty that you are completely loved, the gift of understanding that your presence in this world is not accidental, but intentional, not incidental but purposeful, not marginal, but deeply significant in the story I am telling through human lives and through history. Walk into your days from this foundation. When the doubt returns, go back to the ground. Go back to what is actually, permanently, unchangeably true. You are made in my image. You are my beloved child. Your value is eternal. My love for you is complete. That is the ground. Stand on it. Let it hold you through whatever is still to come. And in the moments when the ground feels unsteady and the old whisper comes back with its familiar arguments, remember this conversation. Remember the table set for you at the center of the room. Remember the home where you belong, where the welcome is not performed but genuine and full. Remember the price that was paid for you and what that price says about what you are worth to the one who paid it. Remember that your name is held tenderly, that the one who made the universe says your name with delight, that you are seen, fully seen, clearly seen, and what is seen is precious. Believe in your value, not because you have proven it, not because the circumstances of your life have confirmed it in ways that are easy to point to, because I believe deeply in you, because the one who knows you completely, who has seen every part of you including everything you have tried to hide, who has watched every season of your life with the fully engaged attention of love, looks at you and says precisely this: precious, mine, worth everything, infinitely valuable, my beloved child. That is the truth about you. Take it with you when you leave this place. Let it go with you into every room of your life, every ordinary Tuesday and every extraordinary moment, every day that feels like progress, and every day that feels like standing still. Let it be the word that speaks over every doubt, the foundation beneath every circumstance, the constant that holds through every variable. You are infinitely valuable. You are completely loved. You are exactly who I made you to be, and who I made you to be is someone I am extraordinarily glad exists. Amen. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear that they are loved, and that their worth is not what the world has told them it is. There is someone in your life right now carrying a heavy doubt about their own value, someone who has believed the wrong voices for too long. Be the one who puts this message in front of them. Type Amen in the comments if you received this blessing, if something in these words reached a part of you that needed to hear it. Your comment encourages everyone else who is listening. Subscribe so that you never miss what God wants to speak over your life, and come back whenever you need to be reminded. You are loved. You are valued. You belong here.